Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. I'm going to briefly discuss this concept of nationality, and then I'm going to go into I want to talk about the general concept of nationality, and then I'm going to go forward in depth of what that means when we talk about nationality. Our prophet says to us, if you think your condition can be better than to join the Moorish Science Temple of America. Moorish Science Temple of America was founded by our prophet, Noble Drew Ali, alayhi salam, may peace and blessings be upon him, to establish a platform for the Moorish Americans, or the Moors living in America as citizens, so that they may have their own nation state. And when I talk about a nation state, I'm talking about a group collective. I'm talking about a standard and a code amongst Moors living in America will uphold to. I'm talking about Moors being involved in the city and state and federal government. I'm referring to Moors playing an integral part of American society. So when we have this idea of what it means to be a Moorish American and what it means to be a member of the Moorish Science Temple of America, I am not talking about you joining a social club. This in part is a social society. I'm not going to get that, that is only one part of it, but it's also a institution. It's also a civil society as well, where we look to, again, establish a platform, a voting block, a vessel by which the Moors and the Asiatics, or the so-called black people living in America, have a voice and a way for them to address the issues that they may face, whether it be major or minor. That is what the Moorish Science Temple is about. Simply put, the Moorish Science, the purpose of the Moorish Science Temple of America is to uplift fallen humanity through that great plan of executing love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Again, the prophet speaks about returning to us our divine creed and our nationality. Our divine creed, when we talk about what a divine creed is, we're talking about a religion. We're talking about a way of life. The concept of it being a divine creed is just that. It's divine because we get these concepts and we get these attributes and virtues and principles from Allah. We as Moorish Americans, we as Asiatics, we as melanated people, however you want to refer to us at this moment, we firmly believe that we have a deeper connection with the Most High, regardless of what you may want to call him, whether you want to call him Yahweh, whether you want to call him Il, whether you want to call him Allah, whether you want to call him Olodumare, etc., etc. We have a genuine and firm connection with that. So that creed, that way of life, that code is divine because it comes from that main source. I say this all the time. The Honorable John Henry Clarke said, a people have to link themselves back to a point of origin. They have to link themselves back to a piece of land. They have to link themselves back to the essence of origin of their creator. If they are not capable of doing that, then they are considered undesirables. So these are just some of the many things and charges that we, as the Moorish Science Temple of America, have to unfold, we have to execute, and we have to establish. Going back to nationality, divine creed. So our prophet is returning to us a divine code of conduct, if you will, a divine ideal for each and every one of us that are proclaiming their nationality as being Moorish American, that we have to uphold. All right. Our nationality, when we talk about nationality, we're talking about a quality or character which arises from a person belonging to a nation or a state. When we talk about character, we're talking about a brand. We're talking about an ideal. We're talking about a way of life. When we look at the etymology of it, it even goes so far as to say the marking of the soul. So what is the state and the status of your soul? How is your soul? All right. When we talk about quality, it actually goes back to character. It goes back to standard. It goes back to what principles are you upholding? All right. So when we talk about nationality, it also determines that all of that quality and that character and or a character also establishes a state of being, a status, a political status, if you will. All right. So when we talk about nationality, we're talking about establishing a characteristic that raises the status of what we were called the so-called, or what was once the so-called Negro living in America, the so-called black person living in America. We have to raise that standard. That changes our status. All right. How you carry yourself out in the world, how they perceive you, how you perceive yourself. That's a reflection. You're going to hear once you go deep into the literature of the Moorish Science Temple of America, you're going to hear words like reflection. You're going to hear words like quality and character and uplifting and raising. You're going to hear the terminology frequently, or that terminology frequently, going back to what determines your status, or what determines your status in these United States of America, is how you treat yourself. It's not about how others treat you, because others are going to treat you how you treat yourself. All right. So if I'm calling my brother and my sister derogatory names, and I treat them as if they treat them as those derogatory names, me knowing that we come from the same blood, then how are people outside of our race, how are people outside of our culture going to treat us? They're going to treat us the same way that we treat each other. So no, it's not just about changing your name. It's not about just changing your ideology, or changing your name from being black to Black American to Moorish American, or African American to Moorish American in certain cases. That name goes with a certain standard. If I say that I'm a Moorish American, that means that I derive all of my principles from my ancestors of Moorish descent. And Moorish descent is a broad spectrum. It goes beyond being a Muslim. It goes beyond being a Hebrew Israelite, or practicing of Judaism. It goes beyond being a practitioner of, or the follower of the Christ faith. It goes beyond that. When you say that you are a Moorish American, you are saying that you are a child of the Most High. The name Moorish is a derivative of Moab in the Bible. And Moab means of the father. So when you say that you are a Moorish American, that you're a Moorish rather, you're saying that you're of the Father. You're of the Most High. You're of the divine. So you have to carry yourself in that manner. And that in itself, as a collective, that establishes what your status is. Because those principles are going to say, hey, I can't live in an environment, I can't live in a community which will allow the education of my youth to be subpar. So not only do I have to make that argument to the city, but I have to go within my neighborhoods and people of like minds, and I have to go and attempt to do something myself. So if I don't like the schools that are in my community, I need to establish my own educational system, or my own educational institution rather. If I don't like how, if the economy in my community is low, because the economy is supposed to work in conjunction with your community. If we look in the so-called Black and African American communities, The economy or the facilities that operate within those communities, within those neighborhoods, are not conducive. They're not reciprocating what the community needs. The most that we get is a big old sign above the registers that says thanks and have a nice day. That's what we get. But when you exhibit a quality of character, you know that in order for my community to thrive, I myself or we have to establish an economy within that community. So those two concepts in itself is what makes a person, or what establishes character. Rather, it is a reflection of that character. So when we say that we are, quote unquote, nation building, we are essentially building character. Okay, so when you join the Moorish Science Temple of America, it's not a thing where the lightning flashes and the thunder, and when the lightning flashes and the thunder crashes down and you're automatically saved. There's work that has to be done. You have to go through a transition. You have to go through a change. All right. Do y'all have any questions? So when we say that the Moorish Science Temple of America is an institution that cultivates the Moorish American, that's what we're cultivating. We're cultivating the character of the Moorish American. We're cultivating and developing the character of any of the sympathizers and Asiatics that want their condition to be better, but may not want to come in wholesale in this movement, and that's all right, because humanity as a whole. The Prophet, the Prophet Noble Drew Ali alayhi salam mentions a lot in the literature being the son of humanity. All right, so that doesn't just, and that is not exclusive to the Moorish American. We are supposed to be contributors to society. And that's a hard pill to swallow, especially when society hasn't been good to us. But the question that we have to ask ourselves, have we been good to each other? Because we can complain about society not being good to us all day, but how do we treat ourselves? Again, that goes back to that quality of character. What are you putting in your body physically? What are you putting in your body spiritually? What are you putting in your body psychologically? How are you treating your body? These are things that we have to ask before we can even go outside of ourselves and say, I'm being oppressed. Because you may very well be oppressing yourself. Now, Prophet says that man is truth and falsehood strangely mixed. And as long as you're on this plane of manifest, as long as you're on the plane of flesh, you're going to constantly battle and wrestle with what we call the higher self and the lower self. We're going to always battle with these concepts of whether or not we're going to be selfish or whether or not we're going to be selfless. All right. So going back to how you're treating Islam, sis, how you doing? Going back to how you treat yourself, because it all starts with self. You know, how is it that you're treating your body? Are you putting the right foods? We're not even talking about whether or not you're going to be a vegetarian, vegan, or a meat eater. How are you treating your body overall, regardless if you're eating meat or not? Spiritually, how are you being fulfilled? In other words, how are you developing your relationship with the Most High? How do you define yourself and your relationship with the Most High? Because if we can't go so far as to say, okay, I know that I have a connection with the broader spectrum of life. Like I'm not just here doing nothing, fiddling around. Because for us to say that we're just here, just roaming around in society, is to go so far as to say that the very blood cells in our body don't contribute. The single individual blood cells. You follow me? You understand what I'm saying? Everything has a part. So when you consider yourself, when you say to yourself, well, what is it? What part do I play in the cosmic scheme of things? Your part that you play is to leave some type of mark of improvement of society. That is your charge. However you attempt to do that is between you and Allah. You have to decide what attribute of Allah you embody, whether it's bestowed upon you by just intuition, if you will, or if it's a gradual process. These are the things that we should be thinking about. We should be thinking. Prophet said, if I can get you to think, you can save yourself. A lot of us are roaming around in the cares of the world, in the dunya, not even thinking. We're acting upon impulse. We're acting on instinct. Some of us will say we're in survival mode. So if you're acting in survival mode, then your rationale is going to be limited, because you're going to be reactionary. You're going to be in a mode where you don't expect the best out of your brother or your sister or the people that you come in contact with. You may only expect the worst. Raise your hand if you heard of being a pessimist. You've heard of being an optimist. You know what I mean? There are people out there that genuinely see the best in things, and there are people in the world that genuinely see the worst of things. Some of it will be also considered a cynic. So the very thought of how we engage with each other needs to change. It needs to be of a higher stature. Yes, sir.
First I rise, giving all praise to Allah, God of the universe, and the highest of honor to His noble and divine prophet,
Islam, sir.
First of all, happy holy day, happy creation day.
Happy holy day.
I was recently listening to an interview about Stoics, and I wanted to compare a Stoic or Stoicism with, I guess you said pessimism.
What are we comparing? Do you know the definition? What's the definition of being Stoic?
That's the thing. I don't know the definition.
Okay.
Of being a Stoic. I do. From the context, it would context of. Let's just. What is the definition of Stoic?
Hold on, sis.
As an adjective, it means a person who can endure pain or hardship without showing the clinical or plain.
Okay, you can go ahead and pause that more.
A member of the ancient philosophical school of Stoicism.
Okay, so simply put, being Stoic is not showing any emotion. All right. So our grand Sheik, our grand governor Haru Ranisi Il, he mentioned, I believe, a few holy days ago about Machiavelli in the book The Prince, and in that literature, in that book rather, he mentioned that the prince or the ruler is supposed to carry a certain degree or a level of stoicism. All right, because if you show any emotion, that is synonymous with showing a weakness. So that's where that concept shows from. In other words, to make it simple, because I'm all about simple, I'm all about making it practical. Being Stoic is showing a poker face, where that person doesn't know whether you're going to go up, down, left, right, or what move you're going to make. So that person is in constant thought about, well, what is he or what is she going to do? Because it's a straight face, it's a stone face. And even in whatever reaction that you get or whatever instance that occurs, you show no emotion. That way that person doesn't know or can't anticipate whatever move you want to make. How many of us are familiar with playing chess? All right. So some of us, if we get a bit haughty, if you will, in playing chess, some of us may exhibit a level of stoicism. A person, you may make one move, or you may actually be moving quite expeditiously. if you know how to play chess fast. Some of them is like chess with timing and stuff like that. So for those that are really good in chess and know that they'll have the upper hand, they'll have a tendency to either do one or two things. They'll either smile or they won't show no emotion. So you'll have a person like myself that's still learning or doesn't play as often. Like I'll sit and think for a minute, I'll make all different types of facial expressions. And then at like 10 or 20 minutes later, I'll make one move. And then when I make that one move, this sister right here may do the other move and then just look at me. And then the whole purpose of chess is to think how many moves ahead. And it's a trick move because the whole time I may be focusing on her when I'm really supposed to be focusing on the board. So regardless of what facial expression she makes or how she may want to rush me, I need to be focused on controlling that middle board or controlling the board altogether. But to your point, not to digress too much, Stoicism is not showing any emotion. And what was the other idea that you are being pessimistic? Pessimistic is thinking, or someone being cynical is thinking the worst, always thinking the worst. All right. Optimistic is someone that is always thinking positive. So, if we were to have a chart, Stoicism would be like in the middle between being pessimistic and being optimistic and being a cynic. Does that answer your question?
Indeed.
All right. Do you have any other questions? All right. So going back to nationality, I want to drive this home. Nationality is a thing, but it's not an object. It's what you are and how you perceive the ideals of, in this particular case, the institution of the Moorish Science Temple of America. So I often mention to brothers and sisters that you are a Moor. If you want to proclaim that you are a Moor, M-O-O-R, then you can do that. One may only proclaim, and it is so. All right. However, to say that you're just a Moor is just mentioning your ethnicity. That's mentioning the descendancy that you come from. But for you to be a Moorish American means that you are playing a role in society. And some of us in the broader spectrum, in the broader society, we don't want to play a role in society. We don't want to play a role in politics. It's a stigma for us. We rather just be to ourselves. So we'll be proud to be a Moor. We'll get all different types of Asiatic and African and traditional garments and trinkets and stuff like that and say, yeah, I represent this. And we'll be an island unto ourselves. But our prophet Noble Drew Ali said, man does not live by himself. He is bound by cords to every living thing. So it is incumbent upon you to play a major role in society, or to play the best role in society that you can. So for you to just say that I'm a Moor is not enough. I'm sorry. I'm going to put that out right now. I'm going to say it again. For you to say that you're a Moor, it's not enough. Because you saying that you're a Moor is only saying where you come from. And if you just want to acknowledge where you come from, then that's fine. MashaAllah, we can do that. But to say that you're a Moorish American and that you are a member of an institution, that you're a member of an organization that supports humanity, that is a servant of humanity, that means that there is hope for your youth. That is hope for the friends of your youth. That is hope for future generations. See, that's another part of character that we have to determine. We have to understand that every decision that we make affects one another. Doesn't just affect you. It doesn't just affect this sister right here. It doesn't just affect me. It affects each and every one of us around us, your circle. Think about this: assets and liabilities. I want you to consider, and I mentioned this before, so for those who have heard this before, please bear with me. Think about this in your friendship, in your circle of friends. Let me back up for a minute. Raise your hand if you know what an asset is. Raise your hand if you know what a liability is. All right. So now the question that I want to ask you is, within your circle of friends, Are you an asset or a liability? Within your circle of friends, are your friends an asset or a liability? If you have a rich friend, I will go so far to say he is not your friend. Why is that? Because if he is rich, then you should be rich too. And it's the same thing for you. If you're the only rich friend out of a group of other friends, then you're not trying your best to make sure that they're in the same condition that you are. And that is, my friend, that is a problem. That is a problem not just amongst the Asiatic community, that's a problem amongst everyone. But I will go so far as to say that other races rather, they're beginning to get it together. As opposed to we Asiatics, Black Americans, if you will, we're still wrestling with that. We still want to we still want to be by ourselves. We still want to be rich because we feel if we give up to somebody else, then it's going to take away from what we have. But we have to understand, in this life, the prophet said that we measure time by cycle ages. Everything that we do is in a cycle. When we talk about reciprocating, so all it is a cycle. When we talk about currency, we're talking about a cycle. So everything we do, again, that goes back to what quality of character is. Everything we do, it has to represent a circle. I want to mention this real quick. We talk about, we have this resentment for the church. Church just means circle. You can't have a resentment for a circle of people that share a like mind. Now, I get it. We may have a resentment and a disdain for the European or the Western ideology of what church means. But we should never reject a circle of friends or a circle of people that have one ideology that they want to execute. Because that, again, that in itself is a principle of nationality. Do y'all understand what I'm saying? Yeah. So I want to talk about change. And I want to talk about change again, remaining in the idea of quality of character. Because I will admit to myself, as long as I've been in the Moorish Science Temple of America, I've been reluctant to admit that the Moorish Science Temple of America is supposed to change you. And that's just me being a Libra, me wanting to acquiesce and not make anybody feel outside or any type of way. But I'm here to say today that when you join the Moorish Science Temple of America, yes, the Moorish Science Temple of America is supposed to change you. It's supposed to change your character. It's supposed to improve your character. All right? So if anybody's coming into an organization and thinking that, coming into this organization and saying that I'm not supposed to change, I'm supposed to just be accepted for who I am, that's not it. If you are not changing in the Moorish Science Temple of America, then both you and this institution, the Moorish Science Temple of America, is not doing their job. All right? I'm going to read a few passages from the Holy Quran of the Moorish Science Temple of America, as per our custom said to us by our prophet. The Holy Quran of the Moorish Science Temple of America, divinely prepared by the noble prophet Drew Ali. The Holy Quran of the Moorish Science Temple of America, by the guiding of his father, God Allah, the great God of the universe, to redeem man from his sinful and fallen stage of humanity back to the highest plane of life with his father, God Allah. Islam? So that in itself is a concept of change. I'm just going to read that again in part. It says, by the guiding of his Father God Allah, the great God of the universe, to redeem man from his sinful and fallen stage of humanity back to the highest plane of life with his Father God Allah. So that means that lower stage of your life, once you join the Moorish Science Temple of America, it's supposed to change. You're supposed to raise yourself up. We are supposed to raise each other up. So this ideology that I'm going to come in the Moorish Science Temple of America and I'm going to remain in my carnal state, and Allah or God is just supposed to accept me as I am, it's not going to happen. You are supposed to return back to the highest plane of life, to the highest plane of thought. That is what it means to be a Moorish American. You are of the Father. So there is no, I'm going to be in the Moorish Science Temple of America, but I'm going to still do the things that I used to do. Because that means, what is it about the Moorish Science Temple of America, or what is it within the Moorish Science Temple of America that is changing you? How are you making an effort to change yourself? All right. So we're going to talk about change. We're going to talk about change in the realm of quality and or character. All right. Now, I'm going to tell a story. Islam, Sheik.
Islam,
all is truly well. Praise Allah. Y'all like stories? I like stories. Islam. Before I go any further, I'm going to start with a passage from the Moorish Holy Quran. I'm going to read from, in part, chapter 1, Creation and Fall of Man. When we all get to chapter 1, Creation and Fall of Man, say Islam. And I am going to read I'm going to be jumping around, but I'm going to stay. I'm going to start where it says, perfected man must pass through all the ways of life. All right. Actually, I'll tell you what, just so y'all won't see me jumping around, I'm actually going to read that whole paragraph. All right. All right. It reads, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. And these soul attributes became a body beautiful, a multitude of lessons man must learn upon the plane of soul, where he tarries many ages until his lessons are learned. All right. Upon the boundary of the plane of soul, the ether began to vibrate slower, and then the essences took on a final garb. The perfumes and the odors and the true sensations and all of love were clothed in flesh, and man was clothed in flesh. Perfected man must pass through all the ways of life, and so a carnal nature was full manifest. A nature sprang forth from fleshly things. All right. Now I want y'all to pay attention, because again, we're going to talk about change. All right. Without a foe, change of character rather. Without a foe, a soldier never knows his strength, and thought must be developed by the exercise of strength. And so this carnal nature soon became a foe that man must fight, that he must fight, that he might be the strength of Allah made manifest. I'm actually going to stop right there. So y'all ready for the story? All right. There was a man. This man was named Jacob. He had a brother named Esau. And one day, Esau and Jacob, they had a quarrel. And I'm going to keep it simple. Esau said, I'm going to go see my man. And Jacob was afraid. And Jacob went through a series of gestures to try to please the brother, to try to please his brother. And Esau wouldn't budge. He was still going, he was going to come with his boys, his 400 peoples, and he was going to have a talk. Some people say he was going to have a sit down. And Jacob was afraid. Why Jacob was afraid? It could be many things. One could think was because Esau was the first child, and by way of his finessing, he didn't get the benefits. Him being the first child, he didn't get the benefits of his father passing away. It passed on to Jacob. But one night, when Jacob was alone, a man came. And a man came and he wrestled. He wrestled with Jacob. And he said he wrestled, and the story goes that he wrestled with Jacob all the way into the morning. Now, if you remember, just a quick sidebar, in our Moorish American prayer, it says that Allah is my protector, my guide, and my salvation by night and by day. Islam? So he wrestles, Jacob wrestles with this man. And this man understands that Jacob is not going to let up. So this man says, this man touches Jacob's hip and he throws his hip off. So he starts to walk different, right? But when Jacob realized that this man was something special, he was spirit. It was a spirit. It was something interesting about this guy, because no man can just touch you by the hip and it just be thrown off. So Jacob said, I'm gonna hold on to this man. I'm gonna hold on to this man, and I'm not gonna let go until I get a blessing. And this man, quote unquote, if you will, said, well, I'm gonna bless you. I'm gonna bless you with a name. Your name will no longer be Jacob. Your name will be Israel. Now, Jacob simply means one that is taken by the heel, a supplanter, one that is tripped up or overthrown, or to drive out or defeated. And when we speak of Jacob, that name or that concept of Jacob, we're referring to a man or attribute of a man that is supplanted or that is overthrown his brother. When he wrestled with this man, when he wrestled with what we know now to be an angel, the angel gave him a name. Now, real quick, according to the doctrine of the Moorish Science Temple of America, we define angel as a thought of Allah made manifest. We define an angel as someone looking, or someone sent to bring a message. So we can very well say that Jacob was wrestling with this message of Allah. But what was this message? We know that Jacob was afraid. We know that he was alone. And I just got finished mentioning to everyone that no man lives unto himself. He's bound by cords to every living thing. And we also know that Jacob also forsaked his brother. So this message that he was wrestling with Allah with was this concept of changing his character. And the blessing that he got from changing his character was one of the blessings rather was the change of character, because he gave in to the will of Allah. Why do I say he gave in to the will of Allah? Because he held on to that message. He held on to the message until the message turned into a blessing, because he utilized that message that was received. Thus it became a blessing. And in that blessing, he received a new name. One who wrestles with ill, or he that contends with ill, or ill or God contends. In the Moorish Science Temple of America, the great Quran of the Moorish Science Temple of America, it is said that when the will of man and Allah are as one, resurrection is a fact. When we talk about resurrection, again, we're talking about raising your thoughts. We're talking about raising the ideology of the collective, raising the ideology of yourself and who you are and what standards that you have. Once again, Islam, everybody. Peace, welcome. We're discussing the concept of nationality. I'm going to say it once again just so I can bring everyone up to speed. Nationality is a thing, but it is not an object. It is a quality of character. So when we're talking about nation building, we're talking about building up character. When we're talking about establishing or having a status in society where you are respected, where you are, where people are looking out for you, that comes from you looking out for yourself, looking out for your brother or sister. So when you join the Moorish Science Temple of America, this is not a lightning in a bottle. It is a work. It is a process. You have to change. You have to change your ideology. You have to change the thought that you had before. And that's going to be a struggle. That's the wrestling that I just got finished talking about. And this wrestling, this contending with Allah cannot be told in words. But thus it has to happen. As the Moorish Holy Quran says, to where truth abides and naught is defeated. Islam? So, when we understand that there will be a change, that there has to be a change in joining the Moorish Science Temple of America, there has to be a change in joining an institution which builds and establishes character, then the ball is in your court. You have to say, okay, well, what is it that I have to do to be a shining example of this change? How do I go back to the mindset of our foremothers and our forefathers? Because we're changing you from a Western ideology to an ideology of Moorish concepts, of African concepts, of Eastern concepts. In chapter 5 of the Moorish Science Temple of America, for those that are taking notes, you can just jot down me drawing from the tools. This is the final thing that I'm going to talk about, and then I'll yield the floor for announcements. Again, nationality is that quality or character which arises from a person belonging to a nation or state. The quality and or that character has to be developed. Thus, our Prophet Noble Drew Ali alayhi salam, he gave us the tools. He gave us tools by way of literature, and he gave us tools by way of parables. And we're going to talk a little bit about these parables today, and they do sound familiar. So in all walks of life, in all organizations, and all fraternities and sororities that you're a part of, the purpose of these fraternities and sororities is to help you build character so you can be a better person in society, a better servant in society. Truth is but one. So, I'll be drawing from chapter 5 of the Holy Quran of the Moorish Science Temple of America, and I will be going from instruction 12 all the way to 21. All right? For those who want to follow, say Islam when you get to chapter 5, instructions 12 through 21. Excuse me, sir. I'll get you straight. How you doing today? And we'll come starting right there. All right. Islam. And even before that, I want to preface this because the prophet says that use this pamphlet. This pamphlet is for all those that love Jesus. And this is, I'm paraphrasing, the purpose of this pamphlet is to get your house in order. All right. So, however, whatever concept of house, figuratively or literally, you want to get that you want to think of, the answer is yes. And the prophet is giving you tools to get your house in order. You have your very own tool belt. And again, this is a change. So he's giving you these tools are literally supposed to change the outcome of a thing. Islam? All right. Instruction 12. One day he, Jesus, was bringing forth the tools for work, and he said, "These tools remind me of the ones we handle in the workshop of the mind, where things were made of thought and where we build up character." We use the square to measure all our lines, to straighten out the crooked places of the way and make the corners of our conduct square. We use the compass to draw circles around our passions and desires and keep them in the bounds of righteousness. We use the axe to cut away the knotty, useless, and ungainly parts and make the character symmetrical. We use the hammer to drive home the truth and pound it until it is a part of every part. We use the plane to smooth the rough, uneven surfaces of joint, block, and board that go to build the temple for the truth. The chisel, the line and the plummet, and the saw have their uses in the workshop of the mind. And then this ladder with its trinity of steps, faith, hope, and love, on it we climb up to the dome of purity of life. So with these things, if you're using these tools, you're manipulating this temple. Some would even go on so far as saying you're manipulating this rough stone and turning it into an ashlar, a smooth stone. And then it goes on in instruction 21, it says, and on that 12-step ladder, we ascend until we reach the pinnacle of that which life is spent to build the temple of perfected man. Islam wars? And I want to reference that final instruction 21. You can cross-reference that with instruction 23. And that starts with, chapter 23, thank you, and instruction 8 all the way down to 13. That is considered your 12-step ladder. Teaching him obedience all the way down to teaching him science. That is that 12-step ladder that you climb up. So again, our prophet says that you are to go back from the fallen stage of humanity back to the highest plane of life, which is Father God Allah. And the only way you got to do that is go up. And that's that ladder. You start off with that three-step ladder, and then you go up to that 12-step ladder. And all of that is building up character. I can even just start right with that, and I'm going to lower my measure, just starting off with obedience. Some of us don't even know how to obey. Why? Because we too grown. I'm grown. I don't need to follow what the other man says or other woman says. I'm a grown man. I'm a grown woman. But everything has order. Everything has a tier system. There is a hierarchy. I answer to somebody. This brother answers to somebody. Prophet Noble Drew Ali answered to somebody. There is a hierarchy. So for you to think that you're outside of that hierarchy, that is an exercise in futility. All right? So obedience in itself is a lesson in character. So even if you start with that, you're beginning to change. Islam wars? So, again, I wanted to share with you a bit in depth this idea of nationality. nationality being a quality of character. Nationality also determining your political status. And see, the thing that we tend to overlook in determining your political status is that, again, that you determine your political status. No one else determines your political status. You do that. So how you treat yourself and your brothers and your sisters is how everyone on the outside of the world is going to treat you, thus raising up your status. Islam wars?
حي على الصلاة